In this video, my goal is to answer the question, how do I hit an opponent who is smart? So I'm going to try to cover all of the universal strategies that exist in KOF 13. And just about every strategy in this game is universal, with the major exception being projectiles, which I covered in the last video, and uppercuts, which are used in anti-air. Everything else is basically universal. I've said this multiple times in videos thus far, but I feel like I need to say it again for this video especially. KOF is an offense-driven game. Your goal should always be to get offensive pressure. Very few things in the neutral will give you damage. Your goal in neutral is not to get damage, it is to get offense. It's to get frame advantage. It's to get positional advantage. It's to get meter advantage. And then once you have those advantages, you can mix up using that advantage to get the damage. If you think of a character like Evil Ryu in Street Fighter 4, use low forward in neutral, cancel out the fireball, and hit confirm into half your life bar and damage, that's really not going to happen in this game. There's very few things that you can just throw out from mid-range and have them be both safe on block and damaging. And you also can't really wait at mid-range for the opponent to attack and whiff punish. The way this game is designed, whiff punishment is extremely difficult. At best, you'll trade. Now that's not to say it's literally impossible, but it's definitely not something worth doing most of the time, or at least attempting to do. Okay, so how do you start offensive pressure in this game? Well, the first answer is to just run at the opponent and attack them, but you obviously can't block while running, so if the opponent throws out a poke while you're running at them, it's just going to hit you in the face. One of the more common pokes to use is a neutral jump attack, and that will also stop you from just running in blindly, because if they block your jump attack, you're going to have frame advantage. One of the most useful tools in training mode is the one guard jump function, which lets you very easily see how much block stun things have, and thus also how much frame advantage things have. So if I get him to block an attack, and then I hold up, I, as the Mr. Karate, will jump sooner, which means that I have frame advantage. And as you can see, the jump CD on block is plus 1,000,000,000. This is true for every jumping normal in the game, but especially jump CDs. Which means that if the opponent ever blocks any jump in ever, you can just run in and start a mix-up. And I'll talk about what mix-ups you have later on. Now you obviously can't block while you're in the air, so I can just hit you out of the air. So it sort of has the same problem as running forward, in that if the opponent just throws out the right poke at the right time, they're just gonna hit you. But unlike other 2D fighting games, this is not something that they can just do on reaction every time. If your opponent's got really good reactions, they might be able to react to your hop with an uppercut, if they have one. But this game's speed is really, really fast. It's extremely unlikely that anybody is going to be able to consistently anti-air hops like that. Plus, if you're standing at the range where a hyper hop can be anti-aired by an uppercut, but then you do an empty, not hyper hop instead, I might end up whiffing an uppercut in your face. Just because I can see that you jumped, that doesn't mean that I can immediately know which of the 4 forward jumps you're doing. So this is the core of KOF neutral, is being able to move and choosing when to attack and when to defend. And the thing is, the things that you use to attack and defend are very similar. Like, this is a defensive move, controlling space with hop CD. This is an aggressive move, controlling space with hop CD. The key difference there is the spacing between the two players, which is controlled by your movement. So you need to utilize a mixture of forward running to move forward, backdashing to move backward, and all your different jump angles and jump types and jump normals to control different spaces on the screen at different times. And then, when you want to go in, you can go in. Movement is key. Even though I'm standing like half screen away and none of my buttons are in reach, I'm not that far away. I'm just a split second away from you blocking a jump in and doing a mix-up. So your neutral should consist of both defensively controlling space and offensively controlling space. And depending on the timing of one player's offensive and the other player's defensive action, one of the two players can come out on top. If the opponent is just spamming defensive moves all the time, there's always some sort of hole that you can utilize. If you jump at a good timing, you'll get the hit. But if you jump at a bad timing, you're going to be the one getting hit. And if you ever get the hit, go in, start applying pressure, that's your chance. And the hit could come from taking advantage of the window of opportunity during the opponent's defense, or it could come from your own defense if the opponent jumps at you at the wrong time. It could also obviously come from, if they don't defend properly and end up blocking a jump attack. And mess around with different anti-airs. Basically anything that hits above the chest is going to be a good anti-hop tool, but probably not a good anti-jump tool. And likewise, things that make good reaction anti-jump tools probably will not work on reaction against hops. Obviously, invincible DPs are going to beat everything most of the time. The consistency and reward of an anti-air can also depend on the character you're playing. But I don't think I can stress this enough. The end goal is offense. The end goal is offense. The end goal is offense. So with all that out of the way, I can start talking about what's going on when you have frame advantage or disadvantage. What types of mix-ups might exist once you have frame advantage? Well, there's strike throw, because throws are unblockable. Although the effectiveness of this mix-up greatly depends on the character you're using. If your character has a hard knockdown, you might be able to get a mix-up off of it. Whereas if a character does not have a hard knockdown on their throw, they can just roll out of it and you can't get any pressure at all. And there are command grabs as well, but for the most part, command grabs and normal grabs serve very similar purposes in this game. The main difference between them is how you counter them. You have to jump a command grab and you have to tech a throw. The second type of mix-up is low-high, although this usually isn't a factor either. There are very few characters in this game who can continue pressure after an overhead on hit. Most of the time it involves using HD, and really the only characters that don't need HD are like Chan and Leona. Most characters can, do an overhead and then their mix-up is over. And then you obviously have your left-right mix-ups. Kyo and Iori are probably the best characters in the game at taking advantage of left-right mix-ups because they have really good jumping command normals that can hit cross-up. And with those characters, you can get a lot of mileage out of these cross-up mix-ups. But just like with every hop normal, if the opponent is not bad, they can just react to it and block it. And usually if they know the setup beforehand, they can see if it's going to be in the front or the back. There are very few instances of actual left-right 50-50 mix-ups in this game. And recall what I said last video about dealing with cross-ups and the way KOF handles inputs. So those are the three main active ways to deal damage to the opponent. You can use throws, overheads, and cross-ups. But there's actually a fourth option that you might not have thought of, and that is the guard gauge. If you continuously apply pressure and the opponent just blocks and blocks and blocks, in most fighting games, that would be them winning. But in this game, it's not, because they can't block forever. If the opponent blocks one attack string from you, that's a third of their guard gauge gone already. So these are the main two mix-up tools that I want to talk about. Throws and the guard gauge, and how that impacts how you have to play the game. So first are throws. Be sure to watch my previous video which talks about the extended throw invulnerability window, which is to say that after blocking, I can't immediately throw you. I have to wait a certain length of time. Also note that you have to stand up to tech throws. You have to press straight forward or straight back. You can't do it while crouching. Or likewise, you have to jump out of command grabs, and jumping also involves not crouching. This means that you can just use a bunch of low attacks and the opponent can't both block the low attacks and avoid your throws. This is sort of like the core mix-up of this game, is low throw. And be sure to utilize the training function of crouch random guard here, and then do your basic low confirm. And if it hits, cancel, and if they block it, don't cancel. And try to narrow this down to as few hits as possible, down to 2 hit confirms at least. And this is a true 50-50 between the throw and the low, if you can get them to sit there for long enough, but they never have to. And this is because there are no tick throws in this game due to the extended throw invulnerability. This means that if the opponent wants to throw me, they have to delay their throw. And because they're delaying their throw, I can hit them. So that's the main counter to this whole mix-up, is to just press buttons. And that will beat both the low and the throw, because you have to time them at the same time for it to be a true mix-up. But think about that for a second. My opponent is getting frame advantage, and what am I going to do? I'm going to mash buttons on their frame advantage. The way to beat mashing is really simple. It's to do a frame trap. But if you do the frame trap, you completely forego the low throw mix-up, because you cannot throw immediately out of block stun. So this means that there are two different mix-ups. There's a mix-up when you come out of the block stun, which is will he frame trap or not. And then there's another mix-up when the throw invulnerability runs out a few frames later, which is will he go for the low or the throw. And it's the defender who chooses which of these mix-ups he is vulnerable to. So look at this chart. This is something I made for my Is Guessing Inevitable doc a long time ago. And it talks about this double mix-up. So step 1, the attacker becomes plus, such such as making them block a jump attack. And once that happens, the block stun runs out and then Mix-Up B starts. And Mix-Up B is, will the attacker frame trap, or will the attacker continue running forward and go for Mix-Up A? If the defender blocks and the attacker does a frame trap, then the defender survives the mix-up, but the defender can call him out and be like, I'm gonna press buttons here, and that'll beat the attacker if he waits for Mix-Up A, but it'll get hit by the frame trap. So if the defender chooses to press buttons, the defender is vulnerable to Mix-Up B. But then, if the defender blocks and the attacker waits for Mix-Up A, then the Mix-Up A occurs, and the attacker can go for a true 50-50 between the low or the throw. And the defender only survives if he techs the throw or blocks the low, but the defender gets hit by the throw or the low if he chooses the wrong option. And that's the basics of the mix-up. That is one layer of the mix-up. So you need to know when the block stun of your attacks ends, and you need to know when the throw-in vulnerability after your attacks ends. Now there's a couple of things to note here. One is that block stun is shorter than the hit stun on attacks, which means that things that are normally links on hit will become frame traps on block. And this is enough to allow you to hit confirm off of one jumping attack. Look how much time I had to react to this jump attack hitting. And depending on your character, you might have an option to hit confirm off of one normal. Okay, but the opponent doesn't have to sit there and block or mash buttons. They have other defensive options. If the opponent uses an uppercut, that'll beat the frame trap. But if the attacker waits for the low throw mix-up, they have enough time to block. They can also reversal backdash. If I reversal backdash and he uses a frame trap, I will get air reset because backdashes are airborne on the first frame. That is assuming they're frame trapping with a normal attack. They can still call you out and frame trap with a special move, which will be unsafe if you block. But the better way to bait backdashes is to revert back to the low throw mix-up. If I backdash and he continues to run forward, waiting for the mix-up to happen, he can see my backdash and be like, oh, you backdash, I can punish this. You can also do a forward roll. And if you do a reversal forward roll, it'll dodge the frame trap. But depending on what they frame trap with, you may or may not be able to punish them, or they may or may not be able to punish you. The frame advantage here will vary widely, depending on what they use to frame trap. If he frame traps with a heavy, you're going to be about even. But if he frame traps with a light, he's probably going to be able to punish your roll. Reversal back roll will probably escape the frame trap without being punished, but it's completely ineffective when cornered. It is also easily punished on reaction if he doesn't frame trap. Guard cancel rolls are safe completely, you cannot punish these, but depending on what they frame trap with, you might still be under their pressure anyway. But if you happen to guard cancel on an attack where they cancel into a special move, you'll probably get a punish there yourself. Guard cancel blowbacks are unsafe if the opponent blocks them, but if they do hit, it always resets to neutral. So they're less safe than the guard cancel roll, but if they aren't blocked, then it guarantees the opponent gets off of you. Whereas the roll will depend on what they frame trapped with. And the main time that your blowback can get blocked is if you do it off of a really low jump in. If you do it off of a really high jump in, it'll probably just anti-air them. So those are just some of the other options that you might consider on the defending side, being uppercuts, backdashes, rolls, and guard cancels. So what does this all boil down to as far as the mix-up game is concerned? Well, there's a basic flow that you can sort of just follow, and if the opponent blocks forever, then they'll eventually get guard broken. But both players can make hard reads at various points to either escape the pressure as the defender, or to get a combo as the aggressor. So the attacker can intentionally put a hole in his offense to go for the low throw mix-up, and the defender can call that out by mashing buttons, or using rolls, or using backdashes, etc. The attacker decides where those holes in his pressure will be, and the defender decides which mix-ups he is susceptible to. And there are plenty of true 50-50s, but it's possible to play in such a way as to completely avoid certain mix-ups. Now there's one more interesting mix-up to talk about, and that is the empty jump throw. So again, whenever the opponent jumps, you can just anti-air them, and that includes empty jump throw. But this is KOF, so you're not going to be able to anti-air every single jump in. So let's assume you're going to block their jump attack. In this case, it is very easy to also defend against their empty jump throw, because if the opponent does the jump attack, you can press the throw break during the block stun of the jump attack. And this is the same timing that you would use to break their empty jump throw. This is a very, very, very safe thing to try to do every time the opponent jumps at you and you can't anti-air them. Not to say that it isn't beatable. If the opponent empty jumps and lands with something that is invincible to throws, then they might be able to blow you up. Or if the opponent lands out of throw range and does an empty jump low, then it might bait you into going for a throw when you can't go for a throw because it's too far, and then the low will hit you. So those are the main mix-ups of KOF. But now we need to talk about the no mix-up. If you do repeated frame traps and re-hops over and over again, the opponent will eventually get guard broken, and this is the crux of the no mix-up. If you never go for something truly minus, something that actually ends your pressure on block, then they have to eventually make a hard read on defense. Because if they don't make the hard read, they're going to get guard broken. But no matter what you do as the attacker, there will always be several different holes in your pressure. Just like there has to be a hole in your pressure every time you go for a low throw mix-up, you can't frame trap over and over again forever. You'll eventually have to reset your pressure, giving the opponent a chance to escape. So instead of just doing the same thing every time, you have to stop at some point during that string and think about how you can reset. The basic way to reset pressure is to just hop in again. It's extremely difficult for the opponent to anti-air this hop because it is at close range, and they can't take advantage of their many different movement options because you have them sitting in place already. So if you think the opponent is going to go for a re-hop, you have to call it out with an anti-air. And in most matchups, you can use your standing light punch as an anti-hop. After your pressure string is the perfect spacing for the opponent to anti-air you with a standing jab. So you need to mix up your hops with full jumps, and hyper hops, and super jumps. Hops require a predictive anti-air, whereas jumps can be reaction anti-aired. You can also reset by just running up a bunch, and this actually merges in with the low throw mix-up. If you go for the run-up low throw mix-up, and they block the low, that goes directly into another pressure string. You could do more frame traps, but at a certain point, your pressure is guaranteed to end after the frame trap, even if the frame trap connects. So choose when you reset your pressure. It can be after 1 poke, 2 pokes, 3 pokes, etc, etc, etc. And combine that with your frame traps to try to catch opponents that are trying to escape the pressure. So again, if the opponent is trying to stand jab out of your re-hop, you can just do 1 low B, stop, do another hit confirm. And that'll look something like this. And that is a legitimate mix-up between resetting your pressure and going for a hit confirm. For example, if I think Shen's going to do 1 poke and then re-hop, but instead of re-hopping, he staggers his attack string, he can really make me hurt. So you need to mix up the number of attacks that you use and the timing of your attacks that you use. And you can even mix up the attacks you use to mix up the opponent. Watch what happens when I do low B, stand B with Takuma. It's really, really fast. Whereas if I replace the low Bs with low As, it's a lot slower, but the outcome is similar. All of these things combined can make it more difficult for the opponent to know when the hole in your offense is coming. You, as the attacker, know when those holes will be before you do them. They do not. So you need to be able to hit confirm off of as few hits as possible for the maximum number of chances at mixing up. The fewer normals it takes for you to hit confirm, the more chances you have to mix up the opponent between each reset of your pressure. The game is fast. It's easy to perplex even the best opponents if you mix up your pressure enough. And that's everything that I wanted to cover in this video. I know it was a long one, but it's probably the most important one.